I'm Michael Graham with Sebastian Partners. Am I on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Alex?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Alex and I have known each other a long time, about 2 hours. So first anyway, I'm with Sebastian Partners, and it's really this Aaron, Courtney, and Megan who I work for. But if they stood up here and talked, you wouldn't listen to what they're saying. So they sent me. So we've been in the fund business before. We've been in the private equity business, but more than anything, we've been in the real estate development business in the Colorado area since 1980. I'm not a native Coloradoan, but I've been here most of my adult life. And when we bought this property, I'll tell you how smart I am. I didn't know it was in an opportunity zone. And we bought it in February 28, 2018. Is that right, Megan? Yes. And as a result, I got a phone call in March telling me that to look for opportunity zones in Colorado and see if I was in one. Well, I did that, and since that time in March of last year, I've learned everything I can about the opportunity zone world. And it's been very mercurial, interesting, changing, and not yet fully baked. But I found the early adopters that were successful were not waiting for the final regulations. They were going forward. There's enough substance to what the Treasury Department set forth in the IRS that we felt we weren't going to wait either. We were developing property one way or the other. You know, we were going through the entitlement process, which we've been through before many times. We had to rethink, as Carl was saying, about the opportunity zone world, because unlike a REIT or a typical real estate project or a general partnership or limited partnership, there's some very wholesale distinctions that have to be made, and we're just I guess what we're doing is we're willing to make those, and we're willing to learn about them, and so we've hired the right counsel that's set forth 20 different funds to date, and so they're not talking about it. They've written them. They're out in the market. They're deploying capital, and so those are the people that I wanted to talk to, because I didn't want someone's opinion. I want, and in the investment world, if you ask them a question and they give you an answer that you know is wrong, that really makes me angry. But if they say I don't know, I'm good with that. And in this case, the people we've used are very experienced in this short period of time. This has only been around for 14 months. And what's featured here, can you go back to a map? Okay, so does anybody know where the new Gaylord Hotel is? You do? Okay. So this is 3/4 of the mile east from that area, going towards E470. 64th is the last stop before you come to DIA. As a result, based on watching the market for the past 7 years, we had developed a project back in 2000 called Single Tree, which is 180 acres of mixed-use development. So we had knowledge, but 2000 is a long time away from the real marketplace in 2018. So we spent about a year and a half doing due diligence. We found that not only was Gaylord going to go somewhere, and eventually the litigation was going to end, but it was going to be up in this area. And why do I say that? Because they were a big unknown driver of something. The traffic that they created and 10,000 bodies going through the hotel had to account for something. We just didn't know what that something was. So what we did was we went to a few of the cities where they're built and talked and looked and saw what went on in and around the Gaylord properties to make them a big anchor tenant, if you will, and a bigger map of the whole area. And what they do is they're in the business of conferences, hotels, and also entertainment. So, you know, the operations of the 1,501 units has more to it than meets the eye. But in this case, we also found out through traffic studies that the corner that says Sebastian Partners, or I'm sorry, it says Diamond Ridge, if you can see that, will be one of the most heavily trafficked corners in Aurora. And it won't be very long. That sounds probably hard to fathom, but understand this, that the profile for that road is 6-lane highway. It has 4 in right now. It'll be 6 by the time we open up our project in about a year. All around it are 6-lane roads. So it's being planned for the future. Okay, so if you can see Avelon right there, I don't want to get in my own way here, but you can kind of see in the red box what I'm talking about. The 3/4 of a mile to the west is the Gaylord project. And other points of interest are 61st Pena Station, 56th Avenue is on both, 56th and 64th are our boundaries. Piccadilly on the east. Piccadilly goes all the way down to I-70. There'll be a new on-ramp to Piccadilly from I-70 that's been approved. And we also think that there's a market need of probably 40,000 pent-up units of residential development that hasn't occurred yet, simply because there was a recession, and that pre-market normal is what I'm talking about, the 40,000 units. That comes from the HBA and other sources that I've had. So we saw it was an opportune time to provide a mixed-use community, and the features of this will be residential, which will have 1,100 units made up of townhomes, duplexes, single family, and that will be, the first phase is in the blue in phase 1, and that will be 440 units. The out parcel in the middle, as Ron and I were talking about, is the Denver Water Board. That's all the water for DIA is right in the middle of the project, but that's neither here nor there. And so our offering is to sell 440 units first, along with single-family houses. And you're saying, how can you do that? Well, in the Opportunity Zone world, the way the structure works, and Damien, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have, in an Opportunity Zone, you have to have a fund, and that fund has to invest in QOZ businesses. And the definition of businesses entails whether it's an approved OZ business or not. And the businesses I just described of horizontal land development and rental properties are approved in the guidelines by the Treasury. In addition to that, we have apartments, about 400 apartments that will be in the northeast section. This entertainment district will include an amphitheater. It's not an original idea. We all know there's an amphitheater in Fiddler's Green in Greenwood Village. There's also a new concept that Live Nation is championing, done in one in Irving, Texas that we're looking at, that's been built about 4 years ago. And it provides office, it provides an amphitheater, it provides 7 restaurants. It also has a very friendly pedestrian, non-car movement to the whole thing. And we're using the same architects that designed and built that. Those architects are called Gensler. So we think the build out of this project will be about 5 to 7 years, barring any calamities or acts of God or war or something else. But we plan on holding all the commercial properties 10 years or more. So everything in orange will be built and just held indefinitely until 10 years has elapsed, and then we'll look at it from a partnership point of view and ask, is this something I want to own forever, or is there too much competition, or We plan on building a 320-room hotel, 2 other small 125 boutique hotels. Down at the corner, at this current time, will be a retail center, grocery center, or something like that. The hard thing about doing this is when you take a piece of ground this large, you have to project into the future for 10 years. And I don't know if any of you have tried to do that, but it's kind of a daunting but creative task. You've got to be flexible, but you got to realize that old ideas don't work. And there will be, what's happening in our market, there's a lot of millennials that are going to be the primary buyers. And what do they want? What do they like? And how do they want to be entertained? And the confluence of all this whole area is such that I know a lot of the projects going on around me, and those people are very forward-thinking. What I love about this area is it's near an international airport. There are very few, if any, areas in the world where you can build around an international airport. Dallas-Fort Worth was the last one, and it's called an aerotropolis if you've read about it, but it all has to do within 15-mile parameter of in and around the airport where people eat, live, play, and work. And so we're fully invested in that concept, and we'll break ground probably in a year from now on the first project. That's part of the first offering. It's $13 million. The first fund is $100 million. What else can I enlighten you on?
Michael, how many funds are you anticipating?
Well, within this, we probably have 5 different funds within this 287 acres. And part of the math will be, I talked about $13 million and talked about $100 million. The second fund will be $15 million, which is the second half, called Avelon Meadows, and so forth. The greatest amount of equity will be spent in the commercial application, which early numbers tell us about $187 million in equity will be spent on development of hotels and entertainment and other things we have planned.
So with regard to the different funds, are you thinking of an individual fund for, say, your boutique hotel or your major hotel, or will that be part of one of your underlying funds?
Right now, the plan is a Gravitas Opportunity Zone Fund 1 starts with the hilltop at DIA. And then on the corners would be 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be the second residential development. So we're talking about 5 in there. But the math of it all is, like I talked about, $187 million. That's obviously surpasses the amount of money we're raising. So it'll be a whole nother fund. We're also looking at projects in Texas, in Nevada, California, and I've just embraced this, and our whole business plan has been modified in total based on opportunity zones, and what I think is a rare opportunity to generate wealth for not only yourself but your family and those invested with you. The opportunity is going to come and go, but those that latch on to and are early adopters, I think, will be the great beneficiaries. Because we all know that one of the keys to wealth is deferral of taxes. Well, this is tax deferral on steroids.
Could you speak to setting up the fund and how you went about that and any issues you encountered?
This is really one of the hardest things that we've had to do in business in quite a while, and that is structuring this fund. The structuring part of it, I was woefully ignorant about what the requirements were with the Treasury Department, the different rules. For instance, to comply and be a fund and be a developer, I can't own 100% of both. I can't, to have a QOZ qualifying property, I can only own 20%. So I've done that. And, that's one of the big acceptance issues that I got over because it's, you know, I don't have that same constraint on the rest of the funds in the project.
The investors on that other 80?
In Fund 1, it's 80-20, yes, to the investor. Yes, sir.
I don't understand a little bit how, I don't quite follow how selling residential single-family homes is like the qualified opportunity zone business, how that feeds that.
It's a good question, and it's horizontal land development. We have 3 districts set out up here that have bonding capacity of up $135 million. We'll probably spend 75 to 80 on infrastructure, and that also works with substantially improving our property because, you know, the amount of money we paid for the land versus the improvements we make to the land are substantially improving the property the way I understand it. As far as this was the big question we had to have addressed, and we've got a good legal opinion on it. Horizontal land development, not building houses, horizontal land development is a trade or business that qualifies under the Treasury or IRS guidelines. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Is it city water and electricity and power?
Yes. It was annexed back in 1991.
How would you define horizontal land development?
Putting in all the streets, curbs, and gutters, sewer, anything past that would be builder responsibility, but we're not building anything. We're putting in public improvements, which could be art, which could be parks, and of course all the peripheral and interior roads. By the way, you asked me earlier, Alex, what I'd ask another fund for qualification, and I would ask about experience. Our experience is we've done 5 master plan subdivisions in Colorado. Daniels Gate and Castle Pines is one. Brookside Park in Loveland is another. Whisper Canyon in Douglas County. Single Tree, and there's one other I can't think of. But our recipe to minimize risk is always the same. We sell the risk up front, and the risk, if there's not a residential market that's strong and buoyant, we don't go. That's it. If there's a recession, we're not going to start a mixed-use development that's dependent on the residential to be sold first. So we've tried to manufacture and make our business model work into the OZ framework, and it looks like we've done so based on the final documents that we were working on today. Yes, sir.
Do you have this opportunity on your website?
Yes. The answer to your question is we are contracting in our opportunity zone, and the fund is contracting with properties adjacent to us to buy homes, whether it's a duplex. In our case, we prefer single family attached and detached, and those we would buy in the first offering, and those would go past 10 years. And I think we'd agree, wouldn't we, Damien, that the answers and responses so far are indicative of the Treasury Department and the IRS being very investor friendly in this manner, and to say you can only invest in businesses or things that are going to be around for 10 years, I think you'd be missing a lot of the market. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Okay,
Thank you, Carl.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.